In the future, criminals are banished for life to treacherous swamps teeming with terrifying creatures. 1,000 years ago, the first settlers left Earth and founded the League of Free Worlds. Some people were fortunate enough to settle on warm and sunny planets, but the main heroes ended up on the harsh planet Height 59. Despite the unfavorable conditions, the people on Height 59 managed to build an exemplary city where order and prosperity prevailed. One day, we meet a group of 10 people who have decided to rebel against the system and its inhumane laws. However, the rebels were caught and are now awaiting their sentence in a futuristic prison. The captain informs the prisoners that their sentence will be enforced tomorrow and tells them they should be grateful that there is no death penalty on Height 59. The prisoners have a chance to redeem themselves. They must travel 300 kilometers due east, where they can start a new life in exile on the Happy Islands. However, this is only the official version. In reality, it is almost impossible to reach the habitable islands due to the swampy terrain inhabited by various creatures. Thus, lifelong exile is no different from a death sentence. First to be released beyond the city limits is the former presidential advisor named Irwin. The captain instructs Irwin to take 20 steps forward with a bag over his head and then wait for his command. Irwin asks if the protective net, which guards the border, has been removed, but the captain does not answer and just pushes him forward. Irwin takes a few steps with his arms outstretched and suddenly throws a stone to make sure it is safe to proceed. The border guard was supposedly not removed from his duty and could have killed Irwin on the spot. This was likely what the authorities intended, but their plan failed. The captain removes the bag from Irwin's head and sends him into lifelong exile with the other prisoners. Then, the guards bring out a metal box containing the minimum amount of food and equipment that the exiles are entitled to by law. The captain also warns that the exiles have 1 hour to start their journey. Anyone remaining on the shore after the siren sounds will be eliminated. One of the exiles, Maria, begins to panic and claims that she is just a tourist who was arrested for no reason. She runs towards the city, but just before reaching the border, she is stopped by Christy, saving her life. Meanwhile, Irwin suggests that everyone introduce themselves. A hardened criminal named Just, nicknamed the Polar Wolf, immediately tries to take control of the group. A young man in the group announces that they are lucky because Just knows the swampy terrain they need to traverse very well. Just states that he needs detailed information about each of the exiles. The first to introduce himself is Valentine Holmer, who was accused of espionage for Earth and the League of Free Worlds. Then Just approaches Jabria's man, a banker. After a quick glance at the man, Just declares that he will be the first to break in the harsh conditions. Suddenly, they are interrupted by a strange noise. It turns out to be a giant creature called the Pagan, which reacts to vibrations and attacks anything alive. Irwin clearly has no intention of submitting to the rude and overconfident Just. After meeting a girl named Christy, he chooses her as his partner. Irwin then suggests dividing the equipment. People immediately pounce on the supplies, grabbing whatever they can get their hands on. Irwin calmly takes a single knife and then throws the flashlight out of Christy's hands, assuring her she won't need it. Soon, Just drives all the exiles away from the box and says their only chance of survival is to follow him to Rottenmeier, an abandoned prison. All the condemned agree, relying on Just's experience. However, Irwin and Christy immediately break away from the group, determined to reach the Happy Islands no matter what. But before leaving, Irwin wants his share of the equipment and food. Just refuses to share, so Irwin puts a knife to the neck of a guy named Jamie. He declares that if he kills Jamie, they will all be shot, as fighting among the condemned is classified as an attempt to obstruct the execution of the sentence. Just, not wanting to lose his life, reluctantly agrees. However, he remarks that Irwin and Christy won't survive on their own. He tosses them a few small rations, but Irwin demands their rightful share: 2 backpacks, poles, and rope. Just reluctantly throws them the supplies and then orders them to get lost. Irwin releases Jamie and then says he also needs the box the supplies came in. Just doesn't understand why he needs it, and Irwin jokes, saying he'll use it to take a bath when he's tired. After some thought, Just says he's willing to sell the box for provisions. Irwin and the confused Christy give up all 6 rations and prepare for their journey. Christy notices the helpless Maria, who can't assemble her pole, and asks Irwin to help her. However, he indifferently states that Maria doesn't stand a chance, with or without the pole. Christy is surprised by Irwin's lack of compassion and says she won't go anywhere without Maria, but Irwin warns her that if she does, she'll be going with Maria without him. Christy reconsiders approaching Maria and asks Irwin why he chose her as his partner. Irwin doesn't hide the truth and says he needs Christy to go first because she is lighter, and since he is stronger, it will be easier for them to navigate the dangerous terrain. Meanwhile, the prison guards warn that anyone still inside the perimeter soon will be eliminated. Just urges his team forward, while Irwin ties himself and Christy together with a rope and attaches the box to himself. Then, all the exiles begin their journey. After some time, a girl named Layla catches up with Irwin and Christy. She is eager to join them, but Erwin meets her with a knife in hand and forbids her from approaching. Layla informs them that her husband Matthias decided to hide in the city and asserts that she will be much more useful to Erwin than Christy. Erwin asks Christy if she wants to help someone this time. Annoyed, Christy declares that she will go alone when suddenly, out of nowhere, gunfire erupts, and Erwin and Christy take cover behind a rock. Noticing that Layla, who didn't manage to hide, is still alive, Erwin realizes the shots were aimed at him. Without taking Layla with them, Erwin and Christy continue to crawl for a long time, not parting with the metal box, which is now covered with strange slug-like creatures. Erwin claims they are harmless unless consumed in large quantities. Christy asserts she will never eat them, but Erwin is confident she'll change her mind soon enough. Reaching a safe spot, Erwin finally stands up and sees the other exiles following them. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out in the distance, and the partners realize that Matthias has indeed been killed. While Erwin sets up camp, Christy ponders who he really is. Erwin seems to know everything but shows no emotions about the events. She suddenly decides to ask him, what if the Happy Islands are just a legend? However, Erwin is certain they exist. He reminds Christy that the guards deliberately didn't remove the perimeter barrier to kill him, but they wouldn't have done so if there was no chance of survival. Christy asks who Erwin was that made them want to kill him so badly. He doesn't respond, and Christy says it doesn't matter. What matters is that he's here in the swamp. Erwin states that it's his first time here, just like Christy, but he knows a lot about this area. Meanwhile, the captain and Layla's supposedly shot husband, Matthias, who turns out to be a spy, report to the president that they failed to eliminate Erwin. However, they assure the president that Erwin won't survive the swamps. Soon, Christy finds a small spring and decides to take a bath. Erwin approaches her slowly from behind and, while removing his jacket, tells her not to move. Frightened, Christy suspects Erwin of foul play and reaches for a stone to defend herself. Ignoring Erwin's warning, Christy turns to face him, only to see an electric whip-like creature emerging from the ground, poised to strike her. Erwin lunges at the creature, covering it with his jacket, and asks Christy to cut it off at the base. While Christy searches for a knife, the whip-like creature manages to wound Erwin, but fortunately, they are able to defeat it. Recovering, Erwin wraps the whip around a stick to use it as a weapon later. Christy tends to Erwin's wound and shares that she was convicted for killing an official who was harassing her by hitting him over the head with an ashtray. Suddenly, Erwin notices that Yust and his group of exiles are very close. Yust tries to take their box, but Erwin fights him off with the electric whip, causing the group to retreat and giving Erwin and Christy a chance to escape. The partners continue on their way, with Yust's group following them. Erwin believes that Yust is trailing them to protect himself from any traps. Noticing a small sprout, Erwin suddenly stops Christy and orders her to lie down and count silently. Confused, Christy obeys as Yust's group gets closer. Soon, more sprouts appear, surrounding Yust's group, who haven't noticed the danger. Suddenly, a pagan creature bursts out from the ground and attacks Jamie, who tries to flee instead of freezing. Horrified by what is happening, Christy accuses Erwin of not warning the group about the danger. He responds that if he had, the pagan could have caught her instead. Meanwhile, the president demands that Erwin be brought back to the city. The military doesn't understand why this is necessary. Matthias reminds them that Erwin is already in the swamp, but the president insists on retrieving him at any cost to prevent him from reaching the Happy Islands. The military, however, is in no hurry to go after Erwin, since Layla, who also works for the government, is still hunting him. Erwin and Christy set up another camp and light a small fire. Christy marvels at how Erwin can so accurately predict their every move. He reveals that he is a mathematician. She asks who he really was in his previous life. Erwin promises to tell her if she can solve a riddle about a boy and a girl who didn't have enough money for a chocolate bar. However, Christy doesn't listen to the entire riddle and falls asleep on his shoulder. Erwin makes her comfortable and then goes to scout the area. After a while, Christy wakes up to a strange noise and sees a multitude of mysterious and dangerous creatures descending the slope towards them. She immediately runs to Erwin, but he sends her back. Erwin fends off the creatures with the electric whip, and then they both hide in the metal box that he had been carrying with him. Inside the box, they can hear the creatures outside trying to get in, but the box holds firm, providing them with temporary safety. Christy, catching her breath, asks Erwin why he didn't let her stay and help him fight. Erwin explains that she is essential for their journey and he couldn't risk losing her. He also assures her that this strategy was the safest way to deal with the situation. As they wait for the danger to pass, Christy asks again about the riddle, showing her curiosity and determination. Erwin, impressed by her persistence, begins to explain it, providing a moment of normalcy amid the chaos of their struggle for survival. After waiting out the danger in a box, they climb out. Inspecting the box, which had sustained numerous damages but saved their lives, Erwin and Christy prepare their poles and set off, now traveling light. Finally, they reach the swamp and step by step, they make their way through a large section of it. Yest's group is still following them. Yest decides to rest in the middle of the swamp, but Layla insists they keep moving or they'll lose sight of Erwin and Christy. Yest says he no longer cares where they go, but Layla can't let Erwin escape. She cuts the rope and tries to catch up to him again. Yest rushes after her but suddenly starts to sink into the swamp. The rest of his group just gloat and continue on, except for a devout man named Jan who reaches out and helps him out. Erwin and Christy stop to rest again. Erwin collects slugs, which they first encountered at the beginning of their journey, and offers one to Christy. Disgusted, she refuses, but Erwin insists she eat it. Christy chokes on the revolting creatures and again asks what Erwin did to get imprisoned. Finally, Erwin confesses he was an advisor to the president of this planet. At first, Christy laughs, not believing him. She can't understand how someone as cunning as Erwin could get caught, but he says he turned himself in out of guilt. Erwin also reveals that he disclosed a state secret intending to overthrow the government. However, the government couldn't eliminate him quietly, so they decided to exile him forever. Erwin isn't discouraged because he sees exile as a chance to survive. Christy regretfully notes that he didn't manage to change the world, but Erwin insists he has a plan. It turns out he launched a microvirus into the entire system, which will soon cut off the government's control over the planet. To fix everything, they'll need a special code that only Erwin knows. Erwin hopes to destroy the current system and give people the chance to create a free world. He's also confident that before the authorities start searching for him, he and Christy will already have reached the Happy Islands. However, the government is already starting to figure it out. The main computer is asking for an unknown password and recommends wiping all data. Meanwhile, part of Yest's group continues following the pair. Spotting movement in the distance, Layla thinks it's Erwin and runs toward it, but it turns out to be one of the feral exiles forced to live in the swamp. A group of cannibals attacks Yest's group and drags Maria to a fire to feast on her. Maria screams reach Erwin and Christy runs to help her, but Erwin stops her just in time, knowing there's nothing they can do for Maria now. Christy tries to recover from what happened and wonders who could have devised such a horrific punishment as exile to the swamps, where people either don't survive or become monsters. Unexpectedly, Erwin admits that he was the one who suggested this method of punishment, thinking it was humane. His words shock Christy, and she realizes that Erwin isn't much different from the scoundrels still in power. She says it would have been better if the border net had burned Erwin immediately, so no one would know his code, and he would have corrected his mistakes. Erwin agrees with Christy and suddenly starts shouting, giving himself away to the savages to receive the punishment he deserves for his sins. Christy accuses him of still only thinking about himself, leaving her to fend for herself. Luckily, no one responds to Erwin's cries, and he decides to take Christy to the Happy Islands after all. Before moving on, Christy confesses that she was offered freedom in exchange for Erwin's life, but she refused. Meanwhile, Yest and Jan find Layla and the other exiles. Layla begs Yest to forgive her and reveals that she is supposed to be freed if she kills Erwin. Yest doesn't believe her, but the others confirm her words. After completing the mission, Layla is supposed to reach Rotten Marsh, where a government ship will pick her up. Yest doesn't understand how the authorities will know she's there, but one man suggests that Layla must have a chip. Finding out that the chip is in her ankle, Yest wants to cut it out. Layla breaks free and tries to run but suddenly falls to the ground, entangled in a strange web. Yest and the others set out to find Erwin, hoping to gain freedom by capturing him, unaware that the government's plans have already changed. Soon, Valentine finds a strange bag, from which a black cloud emerges and instantly takes his life. The government quickly learns about Layla's death. The captain hands Matthias a weapon loaded with tranquilizers and sends him after Erwin. After some time, Erwin calls out to Jan and asks him to take him along. Christy asks Erwin to wait for him, but Erwin doesn't trust him. Stubborn Christy still heads towards Jan, and at that moment, Yest launches a metal key into Erwin's head. Christy and Erwin are taken hostage. While Yest prepares to continue the journey, Erwin tells Christy how she can escape, but she declares that she won't go anywhere without him, then kisses him. Yest demands Erwin to stand up and follow him, but Erwin warns that he's needed alive by the authorities, and if Yest hands him over, they'll just kill him. Erwin refuses to go anywhere, so Yest has to carry him on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Matthias and the special forces arrive at Rotten Marsh, where a group of feral exiles lives. Matthias interrogates a woman, hoping to find out if they've seen any new people here, but a savage shoots one of the soldiers. The military clear out Rotten Marsh and then search it. Then Job approaches the prison. The special forces soldier is about to shoot him, but suddenly a creature emerges from underground and consumes him. Job takes his weapon and heads to Rotten Marsh, where Yest and Jan with Erwin and Christy also arrive. Yest finds Matthias and demands assurances of his safety before handing over Erwin. After receiving Matthias's weapon, Yest goes after Erwin, only to find out that he has escaped. When he realizes that they truly don't intend to leave him alive, Yest points the weapon at Matthias, but it turns out to be unloaded. Matthias wounds Yest in the leg and chest and continues searching the building. Soon, he finds Christie. In January, Matthias shoots Jan and takes Christie hostage, and Erwin understands he has to surrender. But then Job calls out to Erwin, asking how he can help. Erwin asks him to shoot him when he raises his hands, then goes out to Matthias. Matthias releases Christie, and she joins Job. But before Matthias can say a word, Yest appears behind him and stabs him with a bayonet. At that moment, Matthias shoots Christie, but fortunately, it's just a tranquilizer dart. Then Erwin thanks Yest for the unexpected help, and Yest asks for a capsule of poison, as he believes he has no chance of survival anyway. After some time, Job, with Erwin carrying Christie, reaches the Happy Islands. However, they discover that the islands are not real but rather pieces of swamp turf that can be used as a raft. Meanwhile, in the city, the control system malfunctions, and the chief sends for Erwin a second time, but this time demands that the former advisor be destroyed. When Christie wakes up, she doubts that the raft will hold all three of them. Job overhears her words and decides to sacrifice his life for the couple's safety. He jumps into the water, and soon he's consumed by a terrifying underwater creature. Then a new ship approaches Erwin and Christie, but without the code, it loses control and plunges into the water. The couple is relieved that Erwin's plan worked, but then they find themselves on the edge of a water intake. Erwin decides to fold the swamp turf in half and hide in it, which indeed helps them survive. Finally, they arrive on the island where the government bunker and the presidential evacuation ship are located. Everything would be fine, but Erwin doesn't know the last digit of the activation code, and there are only 2 attempts to enter it. After considering numerous ideas, Erwin remembers that before the president came up with the last digit, he asked him the same riddle about the chocolate bar that Christie did. The correct answer was 10, but the president thought it was 9. Christie is confident that 9 is the last digit. Luckily, this guess turns out to be correct, and the bunker opens. However, the ship turns out to be a single-seater, and Erwin tells Christie to fly without him. Christie declares that she will stay with him and admits that she loves him. They kiss, and soon Erwin finds a way for both of them to fit on the ship. Erwin and Christie leave the planet Height 59, and a voiceover informs them that, thanks to their rescue, the Free Worlds League learned the truth about their planet. Peacekeeping forces rid the inhabitants of the remnants of the total control system. However, 10 years later, a new, even more oppressive system was established on Height 59. Do you think it's worth fighting for justice and freedom, or is it unattainable in human society? Share your thoughts in the comments below, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.